Hi everyone, this is Joyce, the voice of Joyce, and I'm in self-quarantine. It was a little tough in the beginning. You guys all know what a social animal I am, and I found the one thing I miss the most is I can't go and walk through my neighborhood and do my 2 to 3 miles of walking that I usually do every day. And I had been pushing that limit to 3.5. So that is a concern. However, being in self-quarantine is not so bad. I've discovered webinars, Zoom, and I am connecting verbally to all my friends more often than we ever did before. We're all checking up on each other. Friends, family, we all care. My shul, which is shut down for as long as the coronavirus is active, has young volunteers who will go shopping for us who cannot get out of the house. And I think it's appropriate that all of us who can self-quarantine do so. Considering that we don't know who has the virus or who doesn't have the virus, we really need, if we're older than 60, to stay inside. And young people who may have systemic diseases or asthma or severe allergies, diabetes, hypertension, they too should be self-quarantined. Remember, the life we save by doing this saves other lives as well, because this is a virus that nobody can see and nobody can feel until it's obviously almost too late. Healthy people have suffered under this virus. Some of them did not know, evidently, that they had an unresolved, compromised immune system, and they have succumbed after several days. It is a tragedy for our healthcare system, and that's why so many of us are voluntarily staying home and not going out and not having visitors. I've discovered Zoom, and I'm going to test it out on Monday, though I have been privy to several Zoom conferences or webinars. And it's a real treat because you get to see people from all over. And you can connect to them and find out how they're doing as well. Yesterday, I was on a Zoom phone call with a chemist from Technion. Many of you may not know it, but I'm a scientist. And I have a biochemistry degree, a master's in biochemistry, and a PhD without thesis from Cornell University, right here in New York City, the Medical College in neuropharmacology. So science to me is something that I've always loved. Technology and gadgets, ditto. And as you can see from my library, I collect all kinds of things. So for me, information makes me unafraid. The more information I have, the happier I feel, because then I don't have anything to fear. I see that in China, because they have taken such incredibly drastic measures of isolating that Wuhan population, their numbers of cases have leveled off to nothing, I think, in the last 2 weeks. South Korea believes in testing. They learn from H1N1, they learn from SARS, and their CDC has a cabinet position. When a corona-type virus comes around, which is happened to us before, it's just what causes the common cold, they're prepared. They have procedures in place to isolate the virus, to do the tests that are necessary, and they set up drive-in centers all over South Korea to test people who have symptoms or not, to determine who has the virus. And by isolating the people who have the virus, they're able to have now also plateaued. We have to be very careful about our hygiene. Washing with soap and water is an absolute necessity. You can't wash your hands enough. This virus can sit on surfaces. Even fruits and vegetables, I've learned, should be washed with soap and water. If you bring food home from the stores, if it's prepared, even if it means that you are cooking it to death, it may not be a bad idea once you open the package to put the food in a microwave or an oven for a couple of minutes more. Won't taste the same, but in Israel, I don't know that anyone is familiar, unless you're a scientist, with autoclaving. That's what the IDF is eating, autoclave food. It's got the proper nutrients, doesn't taste the same, but it's healthy and it does not support viral growth. The other thing that's recommended is have 2 sets of clothing. Clothing that you wear outside, and as soon as you come in, take off your shoes, take a shower, keep those outside clothes separate from all your other clothes, and change. You don't want anything coming from the outside in. If we had testing, which we don't, we could be isolating those who have the virus. We're not in that position. So the only remedy for us is self-quarantine. And even family members with younger kids in the family should keep a good social distance from each other, at least 6 to 8 feet. This is not something to take lightly. And hopefully we will learn, because we don't need to have a shutdown if we're properly prepared. If we're properly prepared, we could probably get a handle on pandemics within a couple of months. And we will not be able to say definitively that this is a one-off. It isn't. Just like our weather is changing, that's what's happening with this pandemic and other viruses that will follow. We'll have to have procedures in place, state-sponsored research and development, scaling up testing, scaling up vaccines, and perhaps, as this one scientist said over the webinar, he's actually working on a supplement that you may take. It evidently works on shellfish and other fish. He has developed a protein complex that interferes with viruses, and they never replicate. And the fish don't get sick, and neither do the shrimp. So there's hope on the way and a lot of ingenuity out there. People are collaborating all over our globe, sharing information, sharing whatever medications they may have. Japan has one medication that works on people who test positive and people who are moderately ill, and they gave that medication to the Chinese. Israel and Gilead has a combination drug, I understand, that we may be testing here in the U.S. I don't know what's happening in New York. In the U.S., it is the HIV medication that they've developed along with an antiviral component. That seems to be working on folks who are also positive for the virus and moderately ill. So the reason to stay at home is a real patriotic one. If I don't get sick, I can't pass the disease on to others. And everyone who stays home should really think of it that way. This is the freedom to be of service to our country. We don't do anyone any favors if we get sick. So I'm home and I'm in quarantine and I'm pretty busy. And I think it's probably not the worst thing in the world, though I will admit to a couple of anxious moments just like everyone else. But there are good things as well, and probably the but's not necessary. The good things are China doesn't have pollution anymore. They can actually see blue sky. People are listening to birds for the first time where they didn't hear them before. And here in New York City, the sun will come up and spring is here and it will get warmer. And who knows what will happen with the virus. But one thing is sure, don't worry about the market. Some of it has been triggered by forces that we were not sure about. Some of it was even shorted by a couple of GOP senators who had insider trading knowledge. That's not the worst of it. The worst of it is if you can do something for people who are vulnerable, do so. I've heard that you can buy gift certificates from your favorite restaurants and pay it forward so that they can survive and pay their employees. It's probably a great idea whose time has come. And for every person who's vulnerable, I do hope that there will be a qualitative easing for the middle class like I've proposed. You can see me at Grandma J. Silver on Twitter or on LinkedIn or on my WordPress account. America Speaks, the Voice of Joyce, or on YouTube, where I am now, and where I'd be happy to have you subscribe. Don't worry about the markets. They had to correct sooner or later. They have gone down about 30%. If you have money and you can invest for the long term, Warren Buffett always said, buy when people are fearful. and sell when people are greedy. It's worked, and it's worked for me a long time. So I recommend it highly. If you've got the money, don't be scared of the market. As long as you're not worrying about margin, and this is for the long term, I'm in it for the long term as well. So I wanted to say, we'll see happier days. This is not the end of the world. I certainly hope that the bailout for the lower and middle classes will be something in the order of $4,500, one-shot deal. Not what they're talking about, and no tax cuts for industry. Loans that they pay back, just like the banks did, that's a win-win for society. Otherwise, no. The oil and gas companies, they've made a lot of money, and they still have trillions. The airlines have booked $45 billion over the last 5 years. So I don't feel sorry for them at all, and nor should you. And for the Dow and the Standard & Poor's, most of those corporations have a tremendous cash moat. They'll recover. It's the people we have to worry about. The people who were dying from diseases of despair before, whether it was suicide, alcohol, or opioids. Those are the people we must care about. And if you're not being treated well by your employer, by all means, there's never been a better time to unionize, and this is it. So don't worry. This is a wake-up call to humanity. We all have to sit and think about where we are in this world and what is really important. But I don't think that's so hard. I think in the end, we'll realize what's really important, and we'll work towards clean air and clean water, and we'll continue to collaborate with all the countries around the world to resolve this COVID virus today and anything else that comes our way in the future. Americans always had a can-do spirit, and when the chips are down, we all come together as one. So, everyone, it's my pleasure to speak to you today and tell you that we will see happier times. So take care, everybody. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you next week.